We want the house, the garden, the business, everything, except her. That was the cold declaration my daughter-in-law made in court. My lawyer slammed the table, shouting that it was the result of my lifetime of hard work and sacrifice. But my daughter-in-law just smirked, gripping the deed in her hand like a trophy, convinced she had finally gotten rid of the useless old woman. She basked in her easy victory, throwing me a pitiful look, the kind you give to someone who has clearly lost. My name is Penelope. All my life, I believed that if I just loved enough, lived kindly, stayed patient, and kept quiet even when I should have spoken up, I would earn respect. But in that moment of betrayal, I realized how wrong I had been. The truth is, it all started earlier, at the Sunday dinner table inside the Hawthorne estate. The moment the blue file folder slid across the mahogany table, cut through the steam rising from the roast beef, and stopped right next to my crystal wine glass. The sound was soft, but in the silence of the dining room, it hit my ears like a hammer striking an anvil. The warmth of the Sunday dinner, the smell of rosemary and garlic I had spent all afternoon perfecting. It all evaporated in a single second. I put my silverware down. My hands, usually steady, gripped the linen napkin tight to hide a sudden tremor. I stared at the bold black letters stamped on the cover of the folder. They screamed at me. Temporary guardianship and power of attorney. It is for your own good, Penelope, Monica said. My daughter-in-law's voice was light, sweet like glazed fruit, but her eyes were flat and cold. She didn't blink. She sat there in her designer blouse, looking at me not as a person, but as a problem to be solved. A line item on a spreadsheet to be erased. Liam and I have discussed this extensively with our attorney, she continued, smoothing the tablecloth with a manicured hand. We believe this is the safest solution. I looked up at my son. Liam sat across from me, his shoulders hunched inside his expensive suit. He refused to look at me. He kept his head down, his knife sawing uselessly back and forth across a piece of meat that was already cold. The sound grated against my nerves. Liam, I said. My voice dropped an octave, summoning the authority of the matriarch I had been for 40 years. Look at me. Is this what you want? You want to declare your mother incompetent? Liam hesitated. He glanced sideways at Monica, just a quick, fearful dart of the eyes. That was all I needed to see. My son, the boy I raised to be strong, was now just a shadow in his wife's world. Mom, please, Liam said, his voice thick and cracking. It's just, you are forgetting things. Yesterday. The faucet in the upstairs bathroom. You left it running all day. The water soaked into the hallway carpet. Monica is worried you might slip and fall. I did not forget. I slapped my hand on the table. My wedding ring hit the wood. Thud. I turned that faucet off. I remember drying the handles with a towel. How could it be running? Monica sighed. It was a long, theatrical exhale, designed to show just how much patience she was exerting. She leaned forward, pushing the folder closer to me. That is exactly the problem, Penelope, she said. She didn't call me Mom. She rarely did anymore. People with cognitive decline never know they are declining. You think you remember. But the reality. You paid the electric bill late last month. You lost your car keys twice in a week. And now the water. We cannot let you live alone in this 10,000 square foot house. It is irresponsible. I stared at the document. Guardianship, a polite legal term for a hostile takeover. If I signed this, I would lose control of my bank accounts. I would lose the right to make my own medical decisions. And most importantly, I would lose Hawthorne Manor. This dinner wasn't a family reunion. It was a trap. They didn't come here to eat. They came to feast on my life. I will not sign it, I said. I forced the words out, spacing them for impact. As long as I am breathing, as long as I am standing in this house, no one takes guardianship of me. This is my home. And I think it is time for you both to leave. The silence returned. It was heavy now, suffocating. The grandfather clock in the hallway marked the seconds. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Monica didn't get angry. She didn't yell. Instead, she smiled. It was a thin, tight smile. She stood up slowly, picked up her purse, and reached for the folder. Fine, she said, shrugging her shoulders. We won't force you. Not tonight. But you should know, Penelope, stubbornness in your condition. It usually ends in tragedy. Come on, Liam. Liam scrambled up from his chair like a puppet pulled by strings. He mumbled a pathetic apology to the air, not to me, and followed his wife toward the front door. I sat frozen until I heard the heavy oak door slam shut. Boom! The echo faded, leaving me alone in the vast, cold dining room. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. A shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't the draft. It was the look in Monica's eyes right before she turned away. It was a look of certainty. She knew something I didn't. Did I really leave the water running? The question slithered into my mind like a snake. I squeezed my eyes shut. No. I am not crazy. I am sharp. I stood up to clear the table, but a nagging thought pulled me toward the kitchen. Monica had mentioned my car keys. She said I lost them. I hadn't lost them. I knew exactly where they were. They were in the silver bowl by the door, where I had put them every day for 40 years. But I needed to check. I needed to prove her wrong, even if she wasn't there to see it. I walked into the kitchen. My hands shook as I reached for a glass of water. I needed something cold to calm the fire in my chest. I pulled open the heavy door of the Sub-Zero refrigerator. The harsh LED light flooded out, illuminating the shelves. I stopped breathing. There, sitting on the middle shelf, right next to the carton of organic milk and a jar of pickles, was a set of keys. My keys. The keys to my 1970 Mercedes. I stared at them. The metal glinted under the fridge light, mocking me. I felt the blood drain from my face. I remembered coming home from the market. I remembered walking to the foyer. I remembered the bowl. So how did they get here? I reached out and grabbed them. The metal was ice cold. It burned my skin. Am I losing my mind? Did I put them here in a daze? I looked toward the dark hallway where my son and his wife had just exited. Outside, the engine of their car roared to life and faded into the distance. I squeezed the frozen keys in my fist until it hurt. The cold bit into my palm, sharp and real. And then, clarity hit me, harder than the fear. I didn't put these keys here. This wasn't dementia. This was a script, and tonight was just the opening scene. The days that followed the dinner did not bring peace. They brought a fog. A thick, suffocating gray fog that settled over Hawthorne Manor and, more terrifyingly, over my own mind. It started with the cold. I woke up on a Wednesday morning, my breath forming clouds in the air of my bedroom. My hands were stiff under the down comforter. I checked the thermostat in the hallway. The digital display was dark. Off. I stared at it. I never turned the heat off in November. Never. The pipes could burst. I knew that. Monica arrived at noon. She didn't knock. She had a key now. She brought soup and a heavy wool cardigan. "Oh, Penelope," she cooed, wrapping the sweater around my shoulders. "You called me last night, remember? You said you were burning up. You insisted I show you how to shut the system down." I called you? I blinked, trying to find the memory. It wasn't there. There was only a blank space. "Yes. Around 2 in the morning," she said, checking her watch. "You don't remember." "I must have been dreaming," I whispered. Doubt, cold and sharp, pricked at my chest. 2 days later, it was the electricity bill. I retrieved the mail from the box at the end of the driveway. Amidst the catalogs and flyers was a red envelope from the power company. "Past due, disconnection notice." My stomach dropped. I pride myself on my credit score. I pride myself on never missing a payment. I rushed to my desk, pulling out my checkbook register. There it was. Check number 402. Written, signed, and mailed 3 weeks ago. I remembered writing it. I remembered licking the envelope. Or did I? I sat at my desk, the red envelope trembling in my hand. Maybe I just thought I wrote it. Maybe I wrote it and threw it in the trash instead of the mailbox. "Marta," I called out to my housekeeper. She was dusting the library shelves. "Did you see me mail the bills last week?" Marta stopped. She looked at me, then lowered her eyes. "Mrs. Hawthorne, you haven't given me mail to post in a month. I thought you were doing it online now." "A month?" I felt the room tilt. The solid oak floor beneath my feet felt like the deck of a ship in a storm. The incidents came faster after that. Small things. Brutal things. My reading glasses disappeared from the nightstand and turned up in the planter box outside. The oven was left on at 450 degrees, baking nothing but empty air, filling the kitchen with the smell of scorched metal. Then came the neighbors. I was trimming the rose bushes, my pride and joy, when Mr. Henderson from next door walked by walking his golden retriever. "Morning, Penelope," he called out. He leaned over the fence, a strange look on his face. "Everything all right over here? I saw you out on the lawn last night. Late. Must have been 3 in the morning." I froze, the pruning shears snapping shut on thin air. 3 in the morning? Jerry, I was asleep. "Oh," he said, clearly unconvinced. "Well, you were wearing that white nightgown, just standing there, looking at the roof, gave me a bit of a spook, to be honest." He walked away, but his look lingered. It was the same look Marta gave me. The same look the grocery clerk gave me when I fumbled for my credit card. It was a look that said, "She is losing it, am I?" I went back inside, locking the door behind me. I went straight to my study. I needed to anchor myself. I needed proof that I was still Penelope Hawthorne, the woman who managed this estate for decades. I went to the safe behind the painting of my late husband. My hands shook as I dialed the combination. Click, click, click. Thud. I pulled out my financial diary. This was my secret, my lifeline. It contained the details of every asset, every account, and most importantly, the notes on the reverse mortgage I had taken out years ago to keep this house running. No one knew about that debt. Not Liam. Not Monica. It was the one secret I kept to protect them from the burden. I opened the leather-bound book to the section marked November. I gasped. The page was gone. It wasn't just missing, it had been ripped out. A jagged, ugly tear ran down the spine of the book. I ran my finger along the rough paper edge. This was the page where I had noted the activation clause. The page that detailed the timeline for repayment if the title ever changed hands. I dropped the book on the desk. "No," I whispered. "I didn't do this. I couldn't have. Why would I destroy my own records? Why would I sabotage myself? But who else? The safe combination was in my head. Only in my head. Unless I said it out loud in my sleep. Unless I walked down here in a trance, opened the safe, and tore the page out. I sank into the leather chair. I buried my face in my hands. The tears finally came, hot and stinging. I was terrified. Not of Monica, not of the cold house. I was terrified of myself. My mind, my fortress, was crumbling. The enemy wasn't outside the gates. The enemy was inside my skull. The phone on the desk shattered the silence. I jumped, my heart hammering against my ribs. I stared at it. It rang again. I picked up the receiver. "Hello? Mom?" It was Liam. His voice was different. He didn't sound like the hesitant boy at dinner. He sounded sad. Deeply, performatively sad. "Monica told me about the oven," he said. "And the neighbor called me. Jerry said you were wandering again." "Liam, I don't know," I stammered. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream that I was sane. But the ripped page lay right in front of me. The evidence was undeniable. I think something is wrong with me." There was a pause on the line, a heavy, calculated silence. "It's okay, Mom," Liam said softly. "We can fix this. Monica has a friend, a specialist, Dr. Evans. He deals with early onset cases. I think you should see him. Tomorrow." I looked at the jagged paper in the diary. I felt small. I felt broken. I needed help. "Okay," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Okay, Liam, I'll go." "Good," he said. "It's for the best, Mom. Just trust us." I held the receiver long after the line went dead. I had admitted defeat. I had opened the door. And somewhere, in the back of my mind, a part of me that was still lucid, still sharp, screamed a warning. But the scream was drowned out by the overwhelming noise of my own fear. I had to get out. The walls of Hawthorne Manor were closing in, inch by inch, breath by breath. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't announce my departure. I simply took the spare key, the one I kept hidden in the potting soil of the foyer fern, and walked out to the garage. My vintage Mercedes sat there under the dust cover, a sleeping beast. When I turned the ignition, the engine roared to life, a deep, guttural sound that felt like freedom. I backed out into the cold November afternoon. I wasn't going anywhere specific. I just needed to drive. I needed to feel the steering wheel under my hands, to prove that my reflexes were sharp, that I was still the woman who had navigated this town for 40 years. I turned onto Main Street. The holiday decorations were already up, wreaths on the lampposts, plastic Santas in shop windows. I drove carefully, keeping the speedometer exactly at 25. I was in control. I was fine. Then, the blue lights flashed in my rearview mirror. Whoop whoop. My stomach dropped. I pulled over to the curb, right in front of the town square. My hands were shaking, not from age, but from a sudden, primal fear. The officer approached. He was young, his face blank and unreadable behind aviator sunglasses. License and registration, ma'am. Officer, was I speeding? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. We received a call, he said, ignoring my question. A report of an elderly driver operating a vehicle erratically. Confused behavior. That is ridiculous, I snapped, indignity rising in my throat. I am perfectly lucid. Please step out of the vehicle, ma'am. We need to conduct a field assessment. I opened the door and stepped out. The cold wind bit through my coat. But the cold was nothing compared to the heat of the eyes upon me. Pedestrians had stopped. People I had known for decades. The baker, the librarian. A group of teenagers stood near the crosswalk, their smartphones raised, black lenses pointed right at me like gun barrels. I could practically see the captions they were typing. Crazy lady on Main Street. Sad. Ma'am, can you tell me what year it is? The officer asked loudly. As if I were deaf. It is 2025, I said, chin held high. And I am Penelope Hawthorne. Okay. Why don't you have a seat in my cruiser? Just until we sort this out. He guided me to the back of the police car. The seat was hard plastic. The cage between us was humiliating. I sat there, a prisoner in my own town, watching the tow truck hook up my beautiful car. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on a metal bench at the precinct. The fluorescent lights buzzed, drilling a headache into my temples. Then the doors burst open. Liam rushed in. He didn't look at me. He walked straight to the desk sergeant, his coat flapping behind him. I am so sorry, Sergeant, Liam said, his voice loud, performative. I told her not to drive. We're having issues with her memory. She gets confused about where she is. I am right here, Liam, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. He turned to me then. And that was the moment my heart truly broke. I expected worry. I expected anger. But what I saw in my son's eyes was far worse. It was annoyance, pure, unfiltered inconvenience. He looked at me the way one looks at a flat tire on a rainy day. Don't start, Mom, he hissed, grabbing my elbow with a grip that was too tight. You've caused enough of a scene. Monica is furious. He didn't ask if I was okay. He apologized to the police for my existence, then dragged me out to his car. The ride back to Hawthorne Manor was silent. A suffocating silence. I looked out the window, watching the familiar streets blur by. I realized then that the report to the police hadn't come from a concerned citizen. It had come from inside the house. When we arrived, Monica was waiting at the door. She didn't say a word, she just held out her hand. Liam reached into my purse, took the spare key I had hidden, and dropped it into her palm. Go upstairs, Penelope, Monica said. It wasn't a suggestion. We'll bring you a sedative. You need to sleep this off. I walked up the grand staircase, my legs heavy as lead. I entered my room. A moment later, I heard the distinct click of the lock turning from the outside. I stood there, staring at the closed door. They had taken my car. They had taken my reputation. And now, they had taken my freedom. I walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting long dark shadows across the lawn. I felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the weather. Have you ever felt that? That moment when the person you trust most in the world, the child you birthed and raised, stands there and watches you fall? And not only do they not offer a hand, but they look at you with cold calculation. Worried only that you might drag them down with you? That feeling. It is a frost that bites deeper than any American winter. If any of you have ever felt the sharp knife of betrayal from your own flesh and blood, please, share your story in the comments. Let us warm each other with the truth, because the world outside is far too cold. I lay down on the bed, fully clothed. I heard footsteps approaching. Monica came in with a glass of water and 2 blue pills. Take these, she said. Dr. Evans prescribed them. For the agitation. I took the pills. I put them in my mouth, drank the water, and swallowed. Monica watched my throat move, satisfied. She turned off the light and left, locking the door again. In the darkness, I spit the pills out into my hand. I had tucked them under my tongue. I hid them under the mattress. Then I lay back, closing my eyes, regulating my breathing to mimic deep sleep. My body was exhausted. My heart was shattered. But my mind? My mind was wide awake. And for the first time in weeks, the fog was gone. They thought they had buried me. They didn't realize they had just planted a seed. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a held breath. Dr. Evans had left hours ago. He was a man with a shiny watch and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a friend of Monica's from the club. He had tapped my knee, shone a light in my eyes, and scribbled something on a pad. Agitation. He had whispered to Liam. Paranoia. Early signs of dementia. I'm prescribing a strong sedative. She needs to sleep. I took the pills. Or rather, I let Monica place them on my tongue. I let her hold the glass of water to my lips. I swallowed, and then, the moment she turned to dim the lamp, I coughed into my napkin and spit the bitter blue tablets into the linen folds. I lay back against the pillows, letting my eyelids flutter shut. I slowed my breathing. In. Out. In. Out. She is out. Monica's voice was a whisper, but in the stillness of the manor, it carried. Are you sure? Liam asked. He sounded tired, completely. That dose would knock out a horse. Come on, let's go downstairs. I need a drink. The bedroom door clicked shut, but it didn't latch. I waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Then, I threw off the heavy duvet. My movements were no longer the frantic jerks of a frightened old woman. They were precise, calculated. I crept to the door and eased it open a fraction of an inch. The grand staircase acted like a sound tunnel, carrying their voices up from the living room with crystal clarity. I heard the clink of ice against glass. My husband's crystal tumblers. We need to move fast, Liam, Monica said. Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It was sharp, businesslike. Once the guardianship is finalized next week, we list the house immediately. Do we have to sell it right away? Liam asked. I mean, it's the family home. Don't get sentimental, Liam. It's a money pit. Monica scoffed. I could hear her pacing. The click-clack of her heels on the hardwood floor sounded like gunfire. Besides, the land value alone is astronomical. But we have to modernize it to get top dollar. That dusty library. Gutted. We'll turn it into a media room. I gripped the doorframe. My library. The place where I had read bedtime stories to Liam. And the garden, Monica continued, her voice rising with excitement. Those hideous rose bushes have to go. They take up too much space. We'll put in an infinity pool. Buyers love infinity pools. The rose bushes. My late husband, Richard, had planted those with his own hands 40 years ago. He had pruned them every Sunday until the day he died. They were his heart. And she wanted to pour concrete over them. I don't know, Monica, Liam mumbled. Mom loves those roses. Mom won't know, Liam. That is the point, Monica snapped. She will be comfortable in the facility. And we will finally be free. Just think about it, the house is free and clear. Dad paid off the mortgage decades ago. It's 100% equity, that is at least $3 million, Liam. $3 million. Yeah, Liam said. I could hear the greed seeping into his voice, replacing the hesitation. Yeah, $3 million would solve everything. In the darkness of the landing, something inside me snapped, but it wasn't a break. It was a realignment. For weeks, I had been crying. I had been mourning the loss of my son, the loss of my dignity. I had been the victim, cowering in the corner, waiting for the blow to fall. But hearing them plan to pave over Richard's memory, hearing them count their chickens before they hatched. The tears dried up, instantly. The fear vanished, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. It was like the winter wind had blown through my mind and swept away the fog. They thought the house was free and clear. They thought I was helpless. They were wrong on both counts. I retreated back into my room. I didn't get back into bed. I walked to my writing desk. I picked up the phone. It was an old landline, heavy and black. I looked at the clock, 3:12 a.m. I dialed the number I knew by heart. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello? A voice answered, groggy and gruff. Arthur, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of Penelope Hawthorne, The matriarch. Penelope? The rustling of sheets. Good God, it's 3 in the morning. Is everything all right? Has something happened? Everything is about to happen, Arthur. I need you to confirm something for me. Can't this wait until... No, it cannot wait. The reverse mortgage I took out in 2010. The one strictly between you, me, and the bank. Yes? Arthur's tone shifted. He was awake now. He sensed the shift in me. The home equity conversion mortgage. What about it? The activation clause, I whispered, keeping my eye on the bedroom door. Confirm the terms. Well, Arthur cleared his throat. It's a standard accelerator clause. Since you are the sole borrower, the loan becomes due and payable in full immediately upon your death, or if you vacate the property, or if the title transfers to a new owner. And the amount? With interest accumulated over 15 years, you are looking at roughly $2.5 million. Due within 30 days of the transfer. If not paid, the bank forecloses. And the heritage status? I asked. Historic landmark, Class A, Arthur recited, registered with the state. No demolition, no exterior alterations. No pools. You can't even change the window frames without a board hearing. A small, cold smile touched my lips. Does Monica know? No one knows, Penelope. You insisted on sealing those records. You wanted to bear the burden alone. Good, I said. Keep it that way. I am going to sign the papers, Arthur. What? Penelope, have you lost your mind? If you sign, you lose everything. No, Arthur, I said, looking out the window at the dark outline of the rose garden. I am not losing everything. I am giving them exactly what they want, and I am going to watch them choke on it. Penelope, draw up the final transfer documents, have them ready by morning. And Arthur? Ensure the asbestos disclosure is buried in the standard addendums. Legally present, but inconspicuous. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, I heard a low chuckle. I'll see you at 9, Mrs. Hawthorne. I hung up the phone. I walked over to the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired, yes. Her hair was gray, her skin was wrinkled. But her eyes? Her eyes were sharp as diamonds. The Penelope who cried over cold soup was gone. The Penelope who built this dynasty was back. I got back into bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. I closed my eyes, but this time, I didn't need to fake my peace. I slept soundly, for the first time in months. Let them build their pool in their minds. Tomorrow, I would hand them the shovel. The next morning, sunlight flooded the kitchen of Hawthorne Manor. It was a bright, aggressive light that exposed every dust mote dancing in the air. I stood at the top of the back staircase, listening. The smell of fresh coffee drifted up. I could hear the hum of the espresso machine, my espresso machine, and the sharp, confident click of Monica's heels on the ceramic tile. I took a deep breath. This was it. The performance of a lifetime. I let my shoulders slump. I untied the belt of my robe just enough to make it look disheveled. I rubbed my eyes until they were red. I needed to look like a woman defeated, a woman broken by her own mind. I descended the stairs slowly, letting my hand drag heavily along the banister. Liam and Monica were seated at the island. They were looking at paint swatches. Morning, Liam said, looking up. He flinched when he saw me. Mom. You look tired. I didn't sleep, I murmured, my voice raspy. I shuffled over to the counter and poured myself a cup of black coffee. My hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from the adrenaline coursing through my veins. We were just talking about the... Monica started, then stopped. She swept the paint swatches into her purse with a quick, guilty motion. About the situation, I turned to face them. I leaned against the counter for support, gripping my mug with both hands. There is no need to hide it, Monica, I said softly. I know. Know what? Liam asked, his eyes widening. I know that I can't stay here. I let a tear slip out, just one. It rolled down my cheek, hot and convincing. Yesterday, the police, the confusion. You were right. All along, you were right. The room went silent. I saw the look pass between them. It was a look of pure, unadulterated shock, quickly followed by a flash of triumph. Mom. Liam stood up, walking toward me but stopping a safe distance away. You mean? I mean I am done fighting, I said. I am tired, Liam. I am so tired of being scared. Scared of the stove, scared of the car, scared of losing myself in this big empty house. Monica slipped off her stool. She approached me like one approaches a wild animal that has finally been tranquilized. It really is for the best, Penelope, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. We just want you safe. That facility I told you about. The Sunrise Estate, they have 24-hour care. You won't have to worry about a thing. I know, I nodded. I am ready to sign. Liam let out a breath that sounded like a balloon deflating. Okay, wow. We can call the lawyer today. But, I said, raising a finger. I have conditions. Monica's eyes narrowed instantly. The predator in her woke up. What conditions? I want this transition to be clean, I said, keeping my voice steady. I will sign the quitclaim deed. I will transfer the title of Hawthorne Manor to both of you, effective immediately. I will step down as the executor of the family trust. That sounds reasonable, Monica said slowly, waiting for the catch. In exchange, I continued, looking down at my coffee. I want to keep my personal savings account. It has about $250,000 in it. That is my care fund. I don't want to ask you for money every time I need a haircut. Monica did the math in her head. $250,000. A drop in the bucket compared to the $3 million estate she was about to inherit. Fine, she said, waving her hand dismissively. That is fair. We're not trying to rob you, Penelope. And, I added, I want the car. The car? Liam asked, confused. The Mercedes? But Mom, you can't drive, the police said. I won't drive it on the street, I lied smoothly. I just want to keep it. It was your father's favorite. Even if it just sits in a garage somewhere near the facility. It is sentimental. It is the last piece of him I have. Monica laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of amusement. That old thing. She smirked. Be my guest. Honestly, Mom, you're doing us a favor. I was going to call the junkyard to have it towed next week. It is just an eyesore taking up space in the carriage house. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. An eyesore. That car was a 1970 Mercedes-Benz 280 SE 3.5 Cabriolet, fully restored. It was worth more than her entire wardrobe combined. But she only saw old metal. Just like she only saw an old woman. So, we have a deal? I asked, extending my hand. We have a deal, Monica said. She shook my hand. Her palm was clammy. I will call Arthur, I said. He can have the papers ready by tomorrow morning. Perfect, Liam beamed. He looked like a weight had been lifted off his chest. I'm really proud of you, Mom. This is the right decision. I turned away to hide the cold light in my eyes. Yes, Liam, I believe it is. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them to their celebration. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Monica's voice, high and excited. Call the architect, Liam. Tell him to bring the blueprints for the pool, and find a contractor who can do demolition next week. I want those dusty old walls down before Christmas. I entered my bedroom and closed the door. They were celebrating. They were popping champagne in their minds. They had no idea what they had just shaken hands on. Arthur had confirmed everything at dawn. The prize they just won was a house legally designated as a Class A historic landmark. They couldn't tear down a wall, they couldn't build a pool, they couldn't even cut down a tree without a public hearing. The asset they just grabbed was filled with lead paint and asbestos insulation behind those mahogany panels. State law required the new owners to abate it immediately upon transfer. That was an $800,000 renovation job they were legally obligated to start within 60 days. And the cherry on top? The reverse mortgage. The moment my name came off that title, the loan would mature. $2.5 million in principal and interest would become due. Not in a year, not in 10 years. In 30 days, if they couldn't pay it, the bank would foreclose. They would lose the house, their credit scores, and every penny they put into it. They wanted the legacy of Hawthorne Manor? I was giving it to them. All of it, the history, the toxins, the debt. I walked over to the window and looked down at the driveway. The Mercedes sat there, gleaming under the morning sun. It wasn't an eyesore. It was my escape pod. And it was the only thing on this property that was truly free and clear. I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. It wasn't happiness, exactly. It was the calm of a general who knows the enemy has just walked into a minefield. Ladies and gentlemen, there are times in life when letting go looks a lot like losing. People will tell you to fight, to hold on, to scream. But sometimes, the smartest move is to simply open your hands and give people exactly what they asked for. Have you ever had to play the fool to see the truth? Have you ever let someone win a battle just so you could win the war? If you have ever found peace in a calculated surrender, tell me about it in the comments. Let's remind each other that sometimes, the quietest move is the deadliest. Downstairs, the phone rang. I heard Monica answer it. Yes. Yes, bring the plans over immediately. We are officially the owners. I sat down on my bed and picked up a book. I wouldn't pack yet. I wanted to enjoy this last day. The day before the avalanche. The music drifted up the grand staircase. It was jazz. Soft, expensive jazz that sounded like ice clinking against crystal. Downstairs, the living room was full. Monica had called it a small gathering. She said it was to celebrate my retirement, a polite euphemism for my displacement. In reality, it was a victory lap. She had invited their friends, the architect, the interior designer, the real estate agent who had been eyeing Hawthorne Manor for years. I stayed in my room. I wasn't sulking. I was preparing. My suitcase lay open on the bed. It wasn't the large Louis Vuitton trunk I used for trips to Europe. It was a simple, sturdy leather carry-on. I wasn't taking much. I picked up the silver-framed photograph from the nightstand. Richard, my late husband, standing by the rose bushes in 1995, his hands covered in soil, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. I wrapped it carefully in a silk scarf and placed it in the bag. Next, the bundle of letters. They were tied with a faded blue ribbon. Richard's handwriting was slanted and messy, but every word was a treasure. I ran my thumb over the envelopes. These were the only things in this house that mattered. The rest, the furniture, the art, the silver, was just inventory. I walked to the closet. I left the furs. I left the ball gowns. I took only practical things. A warm coat, walking shoes, my checkbook, the title to the Mercedes. There was a knock at the door. Mom? It was Liam. He didn't come in. He just spoke through the wood. We're cutting the cake soon. Monica got your favorite, red velvet. I am tired, Liam, I said, my voice calm. I will stay up here. You go ahead. Celebrate. Okay, he said. I heard the relief in his voice. He didn't want me there. I was a ghost at the feast, a reminder of the ugly thing they were doing. Good night, Mom. Goodbye, Liam, I whispered. He didn't hear the difference in the word. I waited until his footsteps faded, then I opened the door. I needed one last thing from the hallway console table. As I stepped out onto the landing, I saw it. The mail had been brought in and dumped on the side table. Monica had probably been too busy chilling the champagne to sort it. A white envelope sat on top. The return address was the bank. Second notice of maturity. My heart skipped a beat. This was the warning. The reminder that the reverse mortgage clock was ticking. If they opened this, they would know. They would know about the debt, the deadline, the trap. I picked up the envelope. I held it in my hand. It felt heavy, like a loaded gun. For a second, just a split second, the mother in me woke up. I thought about walking downstairs. I thought about handing it to Liam and saying, Look at what you are walking into. Don't do this. I looked over the railing. Below, the chandelier sparkled. Monica was standing by the fireplace, holding a martini glass. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her hand resting possessively on the marble mantelpiece. Liam stood next to her. He wasn't looking at the guests. He was looking at Monica with a mix of adoration and fear. To the new chapter, Monica announced, raising her glass. To the renovation, someone shouted. To the pool. Another voice chimed in. Laughter rippled through the room. Liam raised his glass. To us, he said softly. To his wife. I watched him. I looked for a trace of guilt. I looked for a moment of hesitation. But there was none. He was drinking the champagne. He was smiling. He was complicit. The mother in me died right there on the landing. It was a quiet death, no pain. Just a sudden emptiness where the hope used to be. I looked down at the envelope in my hand. Rip. The sound of the paper tearing was swallowed by the jazz music. I tore it in half, then into quarters, then into tiny, confetti-sized pieces. I walked over to the wastebasket by the linen closet and dropped the pieces inside. I wasn't saving them. I wasn't warning them. They wanted to be adults. They wanted to own the world. Then they could own the consequences too. I walked back to the railing for one last look. I didn't feel angry anymore. The rage that had fueled me for days had burned itself out, leaving behind something cleaner, colder. I felt pity. I looked at the house. The grand curtains, the polished floors, the paintings. It was beautiful, but it was a beast. It demanded constant feeding. It demanded money, time, and soul. I had fed it for 40 years. I had given it everything to keep it standing. And now, poor Liam and poor Monica. They thought they were winning a prize. They didn't know they were handcuffing themselves to a sinking ship. They were talking about infinity pools and media rooms. They didn't know about the lead abatement order that Arthur had tucked into the appendix. They didn't know about the Historical Society's restrictions. They didn't know that in 30 days, the bank would come knocking for $2.5 million. They were celebrating on the deck of the Titanic, and I was the only one with a lifeboat. I turned away from the railing. I didn't need to see any more. I walked back into my bedroom and zipped up the suitcase. The sound was sharp and final. Zizz zip. I sat down in the armchair by the window. The moon was high. The Mercedes was parked down below, hidden in the shadows of the carriage house. It was ready. I was ready. Tomorrow morning, we would go to the lawyer's office. I would sign the papers. I would smile. I would shake their hands. And then, I would drive away. I looked around the room one last time. This had been my sanctuary. I had cried here when Richard died. I had nursed Liam here when he had the flu. But a house is just wood and stone. A home is where you have peace. And peace wasn't here anymore. Peace was out there, somewhere on the open road. I closed my eyes, letting the muffled sound of their laughter lull me into a state of meditative calm. Let them laugh. Let them toast. Because tomorrow, the bill comes due. The conference room in Arthur's law office smelled of old paper and lemon polish. It was a smell I had known for decades, a smell that usually meant stability. Today, however, the room felt like a courtroom. And I was the defendant, the judge, and the executioner all at once. We sat around the heavy oak table. On one side, the victors, Monica and Liam. On the other side, the defeated, me. Monica had brought her own lawyer. His name was Brad. He was young, wearing a suit that was too shiny and a watch that was too big. He kept tapping his expensive fountain pen against his legal pad. Tap, tap, tap. He was impatient. He treated this meeting like a formality, a hurdle to jump over before the champagne could be popped. Arthur, my attorney, sat next to me. He was the opposite of Brad. Arthur was 80 years old, with skin like parchment and eyes that had seen everything. He moved with agonizing slowness. He adjusted his glasses. He smoothed the documents. He took a sip of water. "Can we speed this up?" Monica asked, her voice tight. Her leg was bouncing under the table, shaking the water pitcher. "We have contractors coming at noon." "Accuracy takes time, Mrs. Hawthorne," Arthur said. His voice was gravel, slow and deep. "These are complex transfers. The deed. The trust dissolution. The liability waivers." "It's standard boilerplate," Brad interrupted, flashing a white, arrogant smile. "Just show us where to sign." Arthur ignored him. He slid a stack of papers toward me. "Penelope," Arthur said, looking me in the eye. "Once you sign these, the transfer is irrevocable. You understand that, correct?" "I understand," I said softly. I picked up the pen. It was heavy. In my hand. I looked at the first page. Quitclaim deed. This document stated that I was voluntarily giving up all rights to the property at 4 Privet Drive, otherwise known as Hawthorne Manor. My hand didn't shake. I expected it to, but it was steady as a rock. I signed. Penelope R. Hawthorne. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was the only noise in the room. Scritch. Scratch. To Monica, that sound was the sound of victory. To me, it was the sound of shackles falling off. With every signature, I felt lighter. I signed away the drafty windows that rattled in the wind. I signed away the endless property taxes. I signed away the leaking pipe in the basement. I signed away the memories of lonely nights pacing the halls. And, silently, invisibly, I signed away the debt. "Next," Brad said, sliding another page over, Transfer of the household contents. I signed. And the executor resignation. I signed. Liam sat frozen. He was staring at my hands. He looked pale. Perhaps, deep down in that cowardly heart of his, he felt a flicker of shame. He was watching his mother strip herself of everything she owned, piece by piece, right in front of him. But he didn't say a word. He didn't reach out to stop me. He just watched. "Is that it?" Monica asked, her eyes darting between the papers and the clock on the wall. "One last thing," Arthur said. He opened the final folder. It was thick. The acknowledgement of condition and disclosure. "We know the condition," Monica waved her hand dismissively. "It's a dusty old house. We're gutting it anyway." "As you wish," Arthur said. He didn't argue. He didn't point out the appendix attached to the back. He just turned the page to the signature line. "I sign my name for the last time." I put the pen down. "It is done," I whispered. The atmosphere in the room snapped. The tension broke, replaced instantly by a rush of greedy energy. Monica didn't wait. She reached across the table. Her manicured fingers clawed at the center of the oak surface where a small velvet bag lay. The keys. She grabbed them. She clutched the bag to her chest like a pirate clutching a bag of gold. A smile spread across her face, a wide, predatory smile that showed too many teeth. Finally, she breathed. She turned to Liam. "We did it, honey. We own it." Liam let out a shaky breath. "Yeah. We own it." Brad, the young lawyer, started packing up his briefcase with aggressive efficiency. "Congratulations, folks. A smooth transaction. I'll have the deed recorded by end of day." I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. They all stopped and looked at me. They probably expected me to cry. They probably expected a speech about family, or betrayal, or how much I would miss the roses. I smoothed down the front of my coat. I picked up my purse. "Congratulations," I said. My voice was calm, unwavering. "You wanted the Hawthorne legacy. Now, you have it, all of it." I looked at Monica. "Enjoy the renovation, dear. I hear removing old wallpaper can be full of surprises." Monica rolled her eyes, already mentally measuring curtains. "Thanks, Penelope. Don't worry about us. We'll turn that mausoleum into a masterpiece." I looked at Liam. "Goodbye, son." He couldn't meet my gaze. "Bye, Mom. Take care." I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't look back. I didn't linger. My steps were firm. I walked out of that office, not as a woman who had lost a home, but as a prisoner who had just been paroled. As I reached for the doorknob, I heard Arthur's voice behind me. "The meeting is adjourned," Arthur said. He closed his own file with a heavy, final thud. "Mr. Hawthorne, Mrs. Hawthorne, the property is legally yours. Effective this second." I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. The air was cool and fresh. I walked toward the elevator. I didn't run. I simply walked away from the blast zone. The moment I put pen to paper, many people would think I was foolish. They would say I was a weak old woman who let herself be bullied out of a fortune. But ladies and gentlemen, do you know what is waiting for my son and his wife inside that thick stack of papers? Can you guess what happens when greed blinds you to the fine print? If you have a prediction about the surprise they are about to uncover, share it with me right now, because the show is just getting started. As the elevator doors slid open, I heard a sound from the conference room. It wasn't laughter. It was the rustle of paper. Inside the room, as I left, Brad, the young lawyer, had finally picked up the full document to file it. He flipped to the back, to the addendum Arthur had been so quiet about. I imagine his finger pausing on the page. I imagine the blood draining from his face. The elevator doors closed, sealing me in silence. But in my mind, I could already hear the scream. I stood in the hallway. The heavy oak door of the conference room had clicked shut behind me, but I didn't walk away. Not yet. I adjusted the strap of my purse on my shoulder. I checked my watch. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I was waiting for the detonation. I knew exactly how long it would take. Brad, Monica's arrogant young lawyer, was efficient. He wouldn't just stuff the papers into his briefcase. He would do a final scan of the signature pages, just to ensure his commission was secure. He would flip past the deed. He would flip past the trust transfer. And then, he would hit the appendix. I closed my eyes and counted. 1, 2, 3, 3. Inside the room, the silence, which had been filled with the rustling of victory, suddenly stopped. I couldn't see them, but I didn't need to. I had written the script, I knew every line. In my mind, I saw Brad's hand freeze. I saw his eyebrows knit together behind his designer glasses. I saw him leaning closer to the paper, the color draining from his face as he read the fine print I had hidden in plain sight. Then, through the thick wood of the door, I heard it. A murmur, low and confused. "Wait," Brad's voice came through, muffled but audible. "What is this?" "What is what?" Monica's voice was sharp, impatient. "We're done, Brad. Pack it up." "No," Brad said. His voice wasn't arrogant anymore, it was trembling. "Mrs. Hawthorne." "Monica. Did you read Schedule C?" "I don't read the boilerplate, Brad. That is what I pay you for." "This isn't boilerplate," Brad whispered. I imagined Arthur, my old attorney, sitting there across the table. He would be polishing his glasses, calm as a monk, watching the realization dawn on them. "Schedule C," Brad read, his voice rising in panic. "Property designation, Class A historic landmark, State Registry, number 4092. "So what?" Liam asked. "It's an old house." "We knew that." "No, Liam," Brad snapped. "Class A means preservation. It means you cannot alter the footprint. You cannot change the facade. You cannot demolish interior load-bearing walls." "What?" Monica's voice spiked. "But the pool. The open concept kitchen. The contractor is coming on Monday." "You can't build a pool," Brad said. "You can't even cut down a tree without a hearing at the state capitol. If you touch those rose bushes, they will fine you $50,000 a day." I smiled. The roses were safe. "This is ridiculous," Monica hissed. "We'll just pay the fine. Just move on." "There is more," Brad said. The rustling of paper became frantic now. He was flipping pages like a madman. "The environmental disclosure, page 58. "What now?" Liam shouted. "Asbestos," Brad said. "And lead-based paint, the entire insulation system is wrapped in it. And, oh my God." "What? What is it?" "Because the title has transferred," Brad stammered, "the grandfather clause expires. The new owners, that is you, are legally required to bring the property up to current EPA code. You have to abate the asbestos. Immediately." "How much?" Monica asked. Her voice was small now. "For a house that size?" Brad did the math. I could hear the fear in his calculation. "You have to strip the walls down to the studs. Special disposal crews. Permits. Relocation costs. You are looking at $800,000. Minimum." I heard a sound like a chair being knocked over. "800,000. Liam choked. "We don't have 800,000. We spent our savings on the down payment for the new condo." "It gets worse," Brad whispered. These were the 5 words I had been waiting for. "It gets even worse." "The mortgage," Brad said. He sounded like he was about to be sick. "There is a lien on the property." "No," Monica screamed. "That house is free and clear." Penelope said it was paid off. She said the original mortgage was paid off. Arthur's voice cut in. It was the first time he had spoken. His voice was deep, resonant, and absolutely merciless. "And it was. But in 2010, to maintain the estate after the market crash, Mrs. Hawthorne took out a home equity conversion mortgage." "A reverse mortgage." "A reverse what?" Liam asked. "She borrowed against the equity," Brad explained, his voice cracking. "Living off the house's value." "So? We'll just keep making payments," Monica said desperately. "You can't," Brad said. "That is the trap. A reverse mortgage becomes due in full when the borrower dies. Or when the borrower leaves the home and transfers the title." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb crater. "The acceleration clause has been triggered," Arthur said smoothly. "The bank has already been notified of the deed transfer. The full balance is now due." "How much?" Monica screamed. It was a primal sound. "How much do we owe?" "Principal plus 15 years of compound interest," Brad whispered. $2.5 million. "And the timeline?" Liam asked. He sounded like a ghost. 30 days, Arthur replied. "You have 30 days to pay the bank $2.5 million. If you don't, they foreclose, they take the house, they take your assets to cover the difference. And given the asbestos liability, the house is currently worth less than the debt. You are underwater. Instantly." The reality crashed down on them. They hadn't won a fortune. They had won a financial death sentence. They had pushed an old woman out of her home, thinking they were stealing a gold mine. Instead, they had stolen a grenade, and I had just walked out with the pin in my pocket. She knew! Monica shrieked. It was a banshee scream that penetrated the thick door and echoed down the marble hallway. That bitch! She knew. She set us up. She planned this whole thing. She gave you exactly what you asked for, Mrs. Hawthorne, Arthur said coldly. She gave you the house. We're ruined, Liam moaned. Monica, we're bankrupt, the asbestos, the loan. We can't pay this. Fix it, Brad. Monica yelled. Undo it, rip up the papers. I can't. Brad yelled back. It's a quitclaim deed, it's effective on signature. She's gone. She's not the owner anymore. You are. I stepped away from the door. My chest felt light, my lungs filled with air. I walked toward the elevator bank. I pressed the down button. The little light glowed a cheerful green. I didn't feel guilt. I checked for it, searching my heart, but I found nothing. For months, they had gaslit me. They had made me question my own sanity. They had treated me like a burden, a nuisance, an expiration date waiting to happen. They wanted my legacy? They got it. They got the burden of it. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside. Just as the metal doors began to close, the heavy oak door of the conference room flew open with a bang. Liam burst into the hallway. He looked wild. His tie was crooked, his face was a mask of sheer terror. He looked down the hall and saw me standing in the elevator. "Mom!" he screamed. He started running. His footsteps pounded against the carpet. He wasn't running to his mother because he loved her. He was running to his savior. He was running to the only person who could write a check big enough to stop the bleeding. "Mom, wait!" he yelled, reaching out a hand. "You can't leave. We didn't know." "Mom," I looked at him. I looked at the son I had nursed through fevers, the son I had paid tuition for, the son who had sat at my table 2 days ago and watched his wife call me incompetent. He was sweating. His eyes were wide with panic. He looked like a drowning man reaching for a life preserver. But I wasn't a life preserver anymore. I was the captain of my own ship, and I had already left the port. I didn't reach for the open button. I didn't say a word. I simply stood there, clutching my purse, and looked him in the eye. I gave him a small, polite nod. The kind you give a stranger on the street. "Mom." He was 10 feet away, 5 feet away. The steel doors slid shut. The last thing I saw was Liam's face, twisted in regret, disappearing as the gap closed. The elevator began to descend. Smoothly, quietly. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the cool metal wall. It was done. I was homeless. I was alone, and I had never felt more alive. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage. The air here was damp and smelled of gasoline and cold concrete. I walked toward spot 4B. There she was. My 1970 Mercedes-Benz 280 SE Cabriolet. To Monica, she was a rusted heap of metal fit only for the junkyard. To me, she was freedom. Her midnight blue paint gleamed under the fluorescent lights. I had spent thousands restoring her engine, hiding the receipts in my grocery budget over the years. I unlocked the door and slid into the leather seat. It smelled of vanilla and old memories. I turned the key. The V8 engine woke up instantly. It wasn't a cough or a sputter, it was a low, powerful growl, a lioness clearing her throat. I checked my mirrors. I shifted into reverse. Suddenly, the stairwell door burst open with a crash that echoed through the concrete cavern. Liam! He was sprinting. His tie was flapping over his shoulder, his expensive Italian loafers slapping hard against the dirty floor. He looked wild, desperate. "Mom!" he screamed. His voice cracked, bouncing off the walls. "Mom, stop!" He threw himself in front of the car. He slammed his hands onto the hood. Bang! I hit the brake. I didn't want to kill him. I just wanted to leave him. I looked at him through the windshield. His chest was heaving. Sweat was dripping down his forehead, mixing with the tears of a terrified man. He rounded the car and hammered on the driver's side window. "Open up!" he yelled. "Open the window, Mom. You have to explain this." I hesitated. Part of me, the mother part, wanted to drive away and spare him the final humiliation, but the woman in me knew he needed to hear this. He needed to understand the weight of the crown he had just stolen. I pressed the button. The electric motor whirred softly. The glass lowered 4 inches. Just enough to hear him, not enough for him to reach in. Why? Liam gasped, gripping the door frame. Why didn't you tell us? The asbestos? The debt? You set us up. I looked at him. I took off my sunglasses so he could see my eyes. They weren't the eyes of a confused old lady. They were the eyes of the CEO of the Hawthorne family. I didn't set you up, Liam, I said. My voice was calm, cutting through his panic like a razor. I protected you. Protected us. He choked out a hysterical laugh. You buried us. We have 30 days to find $2 million. We're going to lose everything. For 20 years, I continued, ignoring his outburst. I woke up every morning and worried about that roof. I worried about the pipes. I worried about the interest rates. I took out that loan so you could go to college debt-free. I patched the walls so you could bring your girlfriends home to a mansion, not a money pit. But I carried the weight of that house on my back, Liam, alone. I carried it so you could live lightly. I made it look easy. And because I made it look easy, you thought it was free. We just wanted to help, he stammered, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. No, I said, you wanted to own. You wanted the title. You looked at my life and saw a gold mine. You never stopped to ask if it was actually a landmine. Mom, please, he started crying now, real, ugly tears. He grabbed the side mirror. Come back up, sign a new deed, take it back. We can't handle this. I can't take it back, Liam. It's yours. The law is very clear. I put the car in drive. You wanted to be the man of the house. I said. Congratulations, son. You are. Mom, don't go. How are we supposed to fix this? I looked at him one last time. He looked so small standing there in his suit. You figure it out, I said, just like I did. I pressed the button. The glass slid up, sealing me inside my capsule of silence. Liam kept banging on the glass, mouthing words I couldn't hear. Please. Sorry. Help. I didn't look away. I simply shifted my gaze to the road ahead. I pressed the gas pedal. The Mercedes didn't lurch, it surged. That junk car Monica laughed at possessed more power than she could ever comprehend. The tires gripped the concrete. The car shot forward, leaving Liam standing there in a cloud of exhaust. I watched him in the rearview mirror. He took a few steps after the car, his arms outstretched, like a child chasing a bus he missed. Then, he stopped. He collapsed to his knees on the oil-stained floor, his head in his hands. The garage door opened automatically as I approached. The bright white light of the outside world spilled in, blinding and beautiful. I drove out of the shadows and into the sun. I didn't turn on the radio, I just listened to the engine. It was a beautiful sound. It sounded like justice. I turned onto the highway on-ramp. I merged into traffic. I was just another car on the road now, no longer the widow of Hawthorne Manor, no longer the burden. I was Penelope, and for the first time in 40 years, the road ahead was wide open. 3 months later. The air here smelled different. It didn't smell of old dust and floor wax. It smelled of salt and jasmine. I sat on the deck of a small rented bungalow in the Florida Keys. The sun was beginning its slow descent into the Gulf of Mexico, turning the water into a sheet of hammered copper. I took a sip of my iced tea. My hand was steady. My shoulders, for the first time in 20 years, were not hunched against the weight of the world. On the small wicker table beside me, my phone buzzed. It was the only sound in the humid air. I didn't jump, I didn't panic. I simply picked it up. It was a text from Arthur. I swiped the screen to unlock it. The message was brief, professional, and final. It is done. The bank officially foreclosed on Hawthorne Manor at noon today. The outstanding balance could not be met. Liam has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Also, I thought you should know. Brad contacted my office. Monica filed for divorce this morning. She cites irreconcilable financial differences. Take care, Penelope. I read the words twice. Foreclosure. Bankruptcy. Divorce. 3 months ago, those words would have terrified me. They would have meant the destruction of my family name. But sitting here, watching the seagulls dive into the waves, they didn't feel like destruction. They felt like a correction. A forest fire that burns away the dead wood so something new can grow. I didn't laugh. I didn't cheer. There is no joy in watching your child suffer, even if that suffering is self-inflicted. I felt a pang of sadness for Liam. He was a man now, truly alone for the first time in his life. He had lost his shield, he had lost his status, he had lost the wife who only loved him when the credit card worked. But he had also lost the illusion. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest gift I could have given him. I pressed the power button on the side of the phone. The screen went black. I placed it face down on the table. I wouldn't be replying. I stood up and walked over to the railing. For 40 years, I thought my legacy was Hawthorne Manor. I thought my job was to preserve the bricks, the silver, the paintings. I thought being a good mother meant cushioning my son from every hard edge of reality. I was wrong. A legacy isn't a house you leave for your children. It is the strength you leave inside them. A legacy isn't a checkbook that never runs out. It is the knowledge that you can fall, hit the bottom, and stand back up on your own 2 feet. I had finally taught Liam that lesson. It was a harsh lesson. It cost him everything he thought he owned. But if he was smart, if he had even an ounce of his father in him, he would rebuild. And this time, he would build something real. Not on my credit, but on his own sweat. As for me, I looked down at the gravel driveway. The Mercedes was parked there. The top was down. The leather seats were warm from the afternoon sun. She wasn't a relic. She was a survivor, just like me. I picked up my purse and walked down the steps. I was 68 years old. Most people would say my life was winding down. They would say I should be in that rocking chair, knitting, waiting for the end. But I didn't feel like I was ending. I opened the car door and slid in. The engine roared to life, eager and ready. I put the car in gear and pulled out onto the overseas highway. The road stretched out in front of me, a ribbon of asphalt floating over the ocean, leading to places I had never seen. I had no mortgage. I had no schedule. I had no one to answer to. I turned up the radio. Tom Petty was singing about learning to fly. I smiled, letting the wind catch my hair. I wasn't Penelope the widow. I wasn't Penelope the victim. I was just Penelope. And my life was just beginning. The story you just heard has had its names and locations changed to protect the identities of those involved. We're not sharing this to judge anyone, but in the hope that someone out there will pause and reflect, how many mothers are silently suffering in their own homes? Honestly, I wonder. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you stay quiet to keep the peace? Or would you speak up and fight to reclaim your voice? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this story from my channel. Or any feedback you have that could help us make our content even better. God always blesses the brave, and I truly believe courage leads us toward better days. For now, I'm leaving 2 of the most loved stories from our channel on the end screen. I think they'll surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this very moment. If this story touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss what's coming next.